Hello everyone, in today's video I will be narrating stories that I found off of Reddit. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment something down below. But without further ado,
let's get straight into these stories.
I am not sure why I am writing or posting this, but I feel so shaken by this experience. I thought writing it out might be therapeutic. A few weeks ago, I was watching the news and one of the stories reported that a teacher from a prominent private school had just been convicted on multiple accounts of child assault. The victims including his children as well as students. The report of his arrest and allegations had been suppressed until the trial was over, however was now being made public. The reporter also referenced that the defense lawyers argued for a reduced sentence on the basis that the teacher had also been assaulted by his father when he was a child. When the name and photo of the teacher was shown, I almost choked. It was Cameron, who one of my best friends from primary school. I couldn't believe it. In primary school, I was best friends with two other boys, Cameron and Wilson. We finished primary school in 1995, and whilst they were both sent to the same high school, I was sent to a different school and we therefore lost touch after that. We would often sleep over at each other's houses, either the three of us or just two of us, and I started to recall memories I had completely forgotten, all involving Cameron's father. I really don't remember things clearly, but I remember different incidents at various sleepover nights at Cameron's house. Cameron and I would be changing into our pajamas before bed, and his father would come in and talk to us. I know it sounds warped, but I still remember thinking that he was doing this because he was treating us like grown-ups. I think this might have been because my family were extremely prudish with nudity, and I must have felt that nudity was an adult thing, and he was therefore treating us like grown-ups by having a normal conversation. I know it sounds foolish, but I was around 9 to 10 years old when this happened, and totally innocent. Remember, this was the mid-90s, and whilst we knew about stranger danger, we didn't consider friends' parents to be strangers, and no one ever talked about child assault. I also remember times when Cameron and I would be taking a shower, one after the other, and he came into the bathroom to talk to us. I also clearly remember that I saw his father naked once, and he entered the shower as I was leaving it. This is probably the clearest memory, because it was the first time I had seen a grown-up without any clothing on, and that his nakedness was fully visible and he was standing close to me. Only now, as an adult thinking back to that experience, did I realize he was putting himself quite deliberately on display. I just remember him just standing there openly before he entered the shower. I did have a vague memory that he asked Cameron and I to go downstairs, and that Cameron's mother and sister were entering the door downstairs. But as I said, none of these memories were very clear. I hadn't thought about any of this for years, and it dawned on me how innocent I was, and that I didn't realize that his behavior was totally inappropriate. Now that Cameron's lawyers said he was abused by his father, I started to feel sick and overwhelmed by anxiety as I tried to work out whether those experiences were linked, and if there were any more experiences that I perhaps couldn't recall. I really wanted to reach out to Wilson to see if he would be willing to discuss it. I hadn't spoken to him since we were 12, more than 25 years ago, but I fortunately found his profile on Facebook. I messaged him to let him know who I was and named the school and year we finished. Hey, this is Ryan and we were best friends in primary school. I am not sure if you saw this link, but our other friend Cameron was just convicted of child assault. I know we haven't been in touch since we're kids, but I am hoping you would be open to having a chat with me. I am just remembering some things from my childhood involving Cameron's father. I left my mobile number and waited for his response. Wilson responded that same day, "Oh my god, I saw this story too and I am really glad you reached out. I have been feeling so sick about all of this, and this has opened up a lot for me too." Wilson said he would call that night. When he called, we ended up speaking for 2.5 hours. His memory was stronger than mine, but that's probably because the poor guy had more to remember. He said he was abused many times by Cameron's father during those same years. The sequence of events was almost identical to my memories. On the first nights when he slept over, Cameron's father started entering the room when the boys were changing before bed. He then started entering the bathroom whilst he was showering, and he eventually entered the shower, which is when the abuse started. He said that Cameron would often be there when it happened, but had no memory of me being there. This went on for a couple of years and ended in the first year of high school when he turned 13. It was around this age he actually started to become aware that what his father had done was wrong, and only then he felt uncomfortable about it. He stopped talking to Cameron around that time, and they fell out of touch. Wilson never reported it or told anyone, however entered into therapy for some time when he was an adult as he tried to process what he had experienced. I still don't know if I remember that date in the shower accurately, however if Cameron's mom had unexpectedly arrived home. That probably saved me from suffering the same abuse. I had no idea how close I came to experiencing things that could have completely turned my life around. It shocks me to remember my innocent child's mind having having no awareness that anything was wrong, and it would have been so easy to have taken advantage of that naivety. I am still wondering if I have suppressed anything more that might have happened, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, so I will book into therapy to try and work through it. I have changed names in this story, as Wilson still hasn't told anyone, and I don't want anyone reading to piece this together, but the entire experience has shaken me so much. I am glad that there is more awareness about abuse, and people are more open with their children, but please educate and protect your kids. I only now know how easy it is for people to take advantage of children. On my 19th birthday in September 2014, I'd moved into my first home, a small one-bed flat. I was beyond excited to have the freedom and independence that living alone would offer me, and quickly set about buying new furniture, decorations, and items for my home. One afternoon on the bus home after a trip into my local town to buy more household items, an elderly gentleman, in his late 60s if I had to guess, started speaking to me. I've always been a social person that'll gladly speak to whoever speaks to me, so I engaged him in the conversation. Just polite chit-chat about what we'd been up to that day, what our plans were for the rest of it. Upon reaching the stop I'd be getting off at, he told me he was also getting off at this stop as he was visiting a friend who lived in a neighboring block of flats. He offered to help me carry my shopping, and I agreed. I walked with him to the front of my block and said my goodbyes. He left towards a different block, and I thought that was that. He didn't enter my building or see which flat belonged to me, or so I thought. A few days later, I heard a knock upon my door. I opened it to find the same elderly gentleman standing outside my door. I was quite taken aback considering he should have known which flat I actually lived in. He'd also managed to get into the building without ringing my doorbell. The realization hit me that he was hidden out of sight to watch which flat I entered. Side note, the block had large windows in the communal area. He quickly forced his way into my home and tried talking to me. I lied and stated I was about to leave as my friends were expecting me, hoping this would encourage him to go. He then started groping me under my clothes and underwear. I moved his hands away, but he kept trying to remove my clothes. I ran to my front door and told him I'm leaving now, you need to go. Luckily he did, but loitered. I waited to make sure he'd walked away before walking in an opposite direction and immediately calling my dad in tears. We rang the police, who were as unhelpful as they could possibly be. 2 female officers who asked me why did he let him into the flat, despite me saying he'd forced his way in. They encouraged me to not press charges as the name and address he'd given me in our first exchange were falsified, telling me it would be difficult to prove, a lot of paperwork, and he'd have to relive it in court if we did manage to find him. I regretfully agreed. I was shocked and scared, and the police already were so unsupportive. It doesn't end there though. This man continued to stalk me for months, regularly appearing at my door, following me when I was out. It wasn't until he was on the same bus as me to town when I went to meet friends that it finally stopped, as this was the first time I was able to point him out to someone. My friends went over and publicly called him out for stalking and harassing me. They threatened him, saying if we ever hear of you doing this again, you'll not be able to use those arms to abuse another person again. Leave our friend alone. And he quickly scampered away, and that's the last I ever saw of him. But this incident shook me. It all happened simply because I was polite to a seemingly innocent elderly man who wanted to help me and make conversation. Needless to say, I've never accepted another offer of helping me carry my shopping. Be careful who you let help you. It might not be good intentions they have in mind. I just got back from a family vacation in Los Cabos, Mexico. We stayed at a nice Western resort, and usually around 9:30 at night, my family would head back to their rooms to go to sleep. Naturally, as a 25-year-old, I wanted to stay up and party or go drinking at bars, but my older brother was working remotely and wouldn't go out with me. After the family went to bed, I went out to a bar around the corner from my hotel and ended up befriending the locals there and a 29-year-old guy from San Diego named Luke, who was there for a wedding. We started hanging out every night after my family went to sleep, and on the 3rd night of the trip, Luke asked if I wanted to meet him in downtown Los Cabos with his friends. I really wanted to, but I was at an important dinner with the family that went on later than usual. I ended up staying home that night. The next night I met him at this huge mansion they rented on Airbnb, and he told me that it was good I couldn't make it out the night before because of how scary of an experience it was. He explained to me that the night before, his buddy was taking a piss outside and someone approached him and held out a key with a bump of coke on it. Without thinking, he snorted the bump, and the person who offered it was now demanding he buy an $80 bag from them. He was drunk and refused, while getting pretty aggressive towards them. Things went from bad to worse as the Mexican who offered the bump started following their group from bar to bar for the next 3 hours, taking pictures of them. He called his friends, and there were now a group of them following behind and claiming to be affiliated with the cartel. They warned that if Luke's buddy didn't pay them, they were going to call their boss. Luke eventually went over and tried to smooth things over. They told him his friend had stolen from them and it was going to cost him his life if someone didn't pay up. The cartel member also pulled his shirt up, revealing a 9mm pistol in his waistband. Luke did the right thing and remained calm while offering to take them to an ATM and pay out of pocket $160 so they could all be left alone. The cartel members gave him an empty Coke bag and abruptly left. Even after him doing all this for his friend's safety, his friend denied any responsibility or wrongdoing and even had the audacity to blame Luke for trying to help by getting involved. He also didn't offer Luke a single dollar. After this event happened, Luke got robbed again in the same night, with a girl who ripped his $200 gold necklace right off his neck. His friend was cool to me but sounded like a real jerk after Luke explained this to me. Poor dude was just trying to be a good friend and was met with no gratitude, only to be robbed again. Needless to say, I am very happy I didn't make it out to meet them that night. I also think things could have gotten a lot worse for them had he not offered the cartel members money. Be careful out there and never accept quote-unquote free drugs from a stranger on the street in Mexico, or really anywhere. It always comes with a price. If you're liking this video, all I ask is that you make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thank you. Back in 2019, an 18-year-old girl, decided to download Tinder a few months after a rough breakup. I was very inexperienced with dating and pretty shy, so it seemed unlikely that I would meet a potential partner in person. Anyway, after a few matches that led to nothing, I came across the profile of someone that I found very attractive. He was 21 years old. We matched, exchanged snapshots, and continued to set up a date. Our first date was relatively normal/enjoyable. We saw a movie and by the end of it I felt like we hit it off. However, our relationship was extremely short-lived. Not long after I had agreed to be his girlfriend, after about a month of going out, he began to behave very erratically and would sometimes fall completely silent in the middle of conversation, ignoring me when I tried to ask him what was wrong. He became hot-tempered, slamming doors and speeding on the road when he was mad. I started to feel really uncomfortable about our relationship. This went on for about a few weeks until one night, when we were on our way to have dinner downtown, he fell silent mid-conversation. I became extremely anxious as he pulled into a nearby parking garage, wondering what I had done to upset him. As we parked, I decided to ask him what was wrong. He did not answer. When I asked him again, he shouted at me to shut up. I was completely frozen for a moment, but I finally got up the courage to tell him we were done, gather my belongings from the car, and walk over to the nearest coffee shop to call an Uber. It was fairly late at night, so I walked as fast as I could, hoping he wouldn't follow me. When I made it to the shop, I noticed I had several missed calls from him. When I made it home that night, I blocked him on all social media and decided to never contact him again. I'm fairly familiar with the dynamic of toxic relationships, and I knew that if he could talk to me that way, completely unprompted, it was likely that he was capable of much more. About a week goes by as I start to settle my emotions a bit. I decide to confide in a friend who had never met the guy about what happened, feeling completely embarrassed. A few nights later, I received a text from the same friend. It was a screenshot of an Instagram message from someone she didn't follow, my now ex. It said something to the effect of, "Hey, I'm sorry we're having to meet like this, but my name here is ignoring me and I need to talk to her." My heart sunk. I decided to message all of my friends separately and let them know what happened, just in case. Later that week, I started receiving several messages from various accounts, all without profile pictures or posts. Eventually, I gave in and responded to one, asserting that the relationship was over and that I didn't want to hear from him again. I blocked the accounts immediately afterwards. As time went on without hearing a word in weeks, I figured I had reached the end of the situation. Until, one morning while I walked to my car, I noticed something dangling around the handle of my car door. It was a necklace I gave him. He had only picked me up once from my house before. The thought of him driving to my house, about a half hour from his place, earlier that night freaked me out. I was shaken up for a while. It was by no means an expensive necklace, and I had the exact same one, but I kept it pushing. I thought maybe it was his way of acknowledging that we were done. 2 months later, I was working my job at a small boutique near my house. I was used to answering the phone several times a day, so when the phone rang I thought nothing of it, but when I picked up I immediately recognized his voice. He started rambling about wanting a sweatshirt back, but I hung up before he could finish. That was the last time I would ever tell someone I was dating where I worked. I was completely losing it at this point, especially considering he had never called me at work while we were together. I didn't even know how he knew that I was working that day and or time. I told my older sister the situation and she, being very protective, decided to message him herself. She told him to leave me alone and even offered to give him back the sweatshirt for me. He refused and insisted on meeting up with me in person to get it. When it became abundantly clear that he didn't actually want the sweatshirt back, she threatened him with a private protection order, to which he never responded. That was the last time I heard from him. We moved into a suburban house in the southern United States a few years back. When the pandemic hit, I found myself working remotely. It was great since I spent more time with my family and didn't have to spend 2 hours in traffic. However, being home a majority of my week exposed me and my family to a variety of strange encounters that have only escalated through the years. Early in the pandemic, we got a knock on the door in the middle of the morning. I was in a meeting, but I heard my partner open the door. I could tell by the voice it was our next door neighbor, an older woman who lived alone. She was in the process of moving and had stopped by every day or so to give us a few odds and ends that she didn't want to take with her. However, within seconds my partner called my name with a worried tone. I excused myself from the meeting and head over to our landing, which is open to the front door below. Both my partner and the neighbor look slightly panicked. One of our neighbors says there's a strange man sitting on our back wall. What do we do? For context, my house is on a green belt. There's about 500 yards of woods and field until you hit a 4-lane road and small shopping plaza. Our back wall is a smooth concrete and around 6.5 feet high. The ground on the green belt side is sloped, which ends up making the wall about 7 feet high on the green belt side. A taller person with considerable effort could probably scale it. I initially think there's no way someone is up on the wall right now, but sure enough, as I run downstairs and look through the back sliding glass door, there's a middle-aged man smoking a cigarette with both feet hanging into my yard. He's kind of lazily staring at the back of mine and my neighbor's houses. My adrenaline starts to kick in. My kid's swing set and toys are in the backyard. I hate confrontation, but I seem to be automatically moving to open the back door. My partner asks what I'm doing. I open the door and step out onto the porch and start walking across the yard. As I get closer, I can tell the guy is bugging and probably homeless. He notices me when I get about 6 feet from him. I'm trying to stay calm and not escalate. Hey man, what are you doing up here? He gestures around him, enjoying the view. I interrupt. Yeah, you gotta get down and go somewhere else. He just kind of stares at me and swings a leg over the other side but stays put. Please get off my property, I say more forcefully this time, trying to hide any wavering in my voice. Yeah, okay, he slides the other leg around and jumps down, disappearing from view. Never saw this person again. Thankfully, a few months later, I'm working from home. My partner and kid are gone, so I'm alone. There's a knock at the door. Usually, I ignore them unless I'm expecting someone. Most of the time, it's either Amazon or a solicitor. They usually knock once and then take off. However, this person leans on the doorbell and knocks again. Annoyed, I leave the office to go see who it is. I make my way to the door and can hear a muffled conversation taking place on the other end. Before I can look through the peephole, I look and see 4 people all dressed like they're heading to a business lunch, 2 men in their middle 20s, an older man, and a young woman towards the back that couldn't have been more than 20 or 21 years old. I slowly open the door out of curiosity, and the older man immediately gets uncomfortably close and starts speaking forcefully in a language I don't understand. It takes my brain a moment to catch up. I can't understand you, I start to say. He pauses and asks in English, you can't speak Russian, though. Then there's a long moment where we all kind of stare at each other. He looks like he doesn't believe me. Flurried, where is the nearest Russian church? He asks, while the others stand silently behind him. I have no clue. I genuinely have no idea if such things exist in the southern United States. He thanks me and then they all walk back to their nondescript sedan and take off. They did not stop at any other houses on the street. I, a 26-year-old woman, live in a flat building in a good area. It's a long, windy cul-de-sac, so there's not many cars coming in and out unless it's people leaving or coming home from work. My boyfriend is away to Thailand for a month and we usually take the dog out together at night. I went myself, which I was fine with. I usually feel safe. Last week, at around 8 at night, I left the flat to take my dog for a pee. My dog is extremely excitable, especially around other people. She just had her space surgery. She has a cone on her head and stitches that have to heal. I'm waiting for my dog to do her business, and a car pulls in and drives slowly past me. The guy did a friendly neighborly nod towards me, so I did a small smile back, you know, to be polite. The guy parks at the front of the building, and I'm at the other side of the car park on the grass with my dog. I'm watching my dog, trying to get her to hurry up because it was freezing. I look up, and the man has stood outside his car staring at me. Freaked out by this, I turn my attention back to my dog. I keep looking over my shoulder, and he's staring with a creepy smile on his face. I looked away again for a second, and he was walking along the road slowly towards us. I'm a really friendly person. I can be paranoid and aware, as any woman should be at night, but something about him made me feel scared. He's walking so slow, as if he wants to talk to me, so I hide behind a van, and I'm telling my dog hurry up and pee. I can't see him anymore, which terrified the life out of me. All I hear are footsteps coming towards us. The guy peeks his face around the van, and my dog goes nuts. She's jumping around, barking aggressively, which she never does with people, and the guy doesn't take that as a reason to leave. My dog is showing implying that he doesn't want his presence, but even though she's doing this, he continues walking towards us slowly. I start backing up and say to him to please leave as she's just had surgery and she's too excited. In the most quiet, sinister voice he asks what's your name. I couldn't really hear him. He kept repeating the question. I eventually understood what he was asking. My dog is still going absolutely nuts at him. I say again, please, my dog's just had surgery. You need to walk away, she's too excited. Ignored again. Walks towards us, asking my name, so I start walking away from him. He ponders for a minute, still smiling, creepily may I add. He eventually backs up slowly, still facing me. I swear he did this for at least 20 seconds. He walks back to his car, looking over his shoulder at me, then stands back at his car and stares for another 3 minutes. I pretend my dog is doing something, which she's really just being a pain in the butt and just standing there. I look up and he's gone. I'm shaking and sending my sister voice notes about what's going on. She's telling me just go inside, but she doesn't realize I'm frozen in fear. Eventually, I see a woman and her son rock up to the front door, so I half jog over with my dog to go inside the same time as them. The front of our building has glass doors. I glance in and the man is standing there, waiting for us. I told the woman this man has been following me and my dog. I'm scared and she walks in with me. The man sees I'm not alone and walks right past us out of the building again. I run into the lift with my dog, get in and lock my doors. I decide to tell my 2 guy neighbors about it, as my boyfriend is away and they agree to run downstairs if I ever need them. I took a picture of his car and registration plate, as my twin sister gets the train home late at night after work and I want her to be wary of him. Well, today I was out with my dog at 11 in the morning, just doing our usual walk around the block. We walk into the building and as we are heading to the lift, I see the guy peek his head around the corner. He was looking for me. He started walking towards me. At first I didn't recognize him, but then he smiled his creepy smile and I realized who it was. He said hello, so I said hi then beeline for the lift. He came towards me and my dog again. I pressed the lift button just watching it come down from the 6th floor. He comes and stands closer to me again. My dog is going nuts at him. He asked what my name was. He has an accent. He asked again when I didn't understand what he was saying. I asked what my dog's name or mine. He goes yours. I froze and said a fake name. He started to move closer. I had no time to pay attention. The lift was about to open and I could run away. He told me his name. I replied nice to meet you and finally the lift doors opened. I walked in and pressed the button to my floor hoping he'd leave me alone. He ran behind me as I walked in and when I'd like to see you again. Shivers ran down my spine. I was so creeped out. I replied that I had a boyfriend, but thanks. As I said this, the lift doors were closing and he tried to stick his hand out to stop the lift from closing. Thank goodness they closed on time. I'm only on the next floor up, so I was so afraid he was going to run up as he could see what floor I got off at. I stopped for a moment and almost pressed a different floor, but I just wanted to get into my home and lock the doors. The lift opens and he's not there, so I beeline to my front door. There's a glass door to the stairs, and I swear I thought I saw someone coming up. I ran in and locked the front door. I was so confused by what just happened. Next thing I do, message everyone with the update. They told me to phone the non-emergency police number, even just to get it on record, so I did that, and the police arrived at my flat at 3 in the afternoon. I explained everything to them, and they said I could either 1, get the police to go to his front door and tell him to knock it off, or 2, next time he does something like that, tell him to leave me alone, and if he doesn't, phone the police as it would then be considered harassment. But for now, the police couldn't do more, which is fair enough. I didn't want to anger him at this stage, as it's not a crime at this point, but why can't he just leave me alone? I've clearly shown that I'm not interested. I hate saying something's going on when it maybe isn't, but I just have a terrible gut feeling. I hadn't seen the guy since the last incident, however I saw him today. I again was taking my dog out to the toilet around 1 in the afternoon. As soon as I left the main door, I look and the guy is sitting in his car. He clocked me. I started walking past his car when he got out and said hello to me. I completely ignored him and walked on by. I was preparing myself to shout at him if he kept following or talking to me. I went over to the grass and the guy is standing at his car staring. Again, I'm a bit further away, so I text my sister letting her know that he was at his car watching me. She didn't reply, so I phoned one of my guy neighbors and he quickly got his shoes on and said he was coming down the stairs. I look back at the man and it seems as though he has his phone out, recording me. I started shaking, working myself up to the point of confronting him and telling him to leave me alone. Next thing I know, my sister bolts out of the building and fast walks over to me and my dog. She said as soon as she came out of the building, she saw him back inside his car with the car door fully open and his back was turned to her because he was watching me. So she saw at this time, he looked at her briefly and watched her walk over to me. He started staring at us both. That's when my guy neighbor got outside and walked over to us. The man continued watching as I told them both I think he was waiting for me to go back into the building, because why was he just sitting there? My sister had enough of it, so she told me and my neighbor to take the dog for her walk dock and stormed over to the guy's car. She said excuse me and he was shocked. She stood right in front of his car and explained that he needs to leave me alone. I'm not interested. I told him the dog had surgery and he wouldn't leave, which is unacceptable. She also said that I had mentioned about my boyfriend, so he needs to leave me alone. He just nodded and mumbled a few times. She said he looked frightened. She walked back into the building, so we took the dog a walk, and when we got back, he was gone. Probably got out of his car and ran back into his flat. I mean, he made me uncomfortable, so she did it to him. Now, if anything else happens, I'm phoning the police as they would then say it's harassment. When I was in my early 20s, me and some friends went out to celebrate my birthday. We went to a couple parties since it was the weekend, then bar hopped the rest of the night. While we were at a bar, we met a group of guys that offered to buy us drinks. It was my birthday, so this sounded nice. We danced around with them for a bit before retreating back to our little section. One of the guys come over to our section and asked me to dance again. I told him maybe in a bit and went back to partying with my girl. We didn't see them again until the club closed. The group of guys came over to us, and of course we're trying to find someone to go home with. The same guy that approached me earlier had approached me again. I laughed it off and thanked him for a good time. By this time, we all were getting in the car. We had a designated driver and they made sure each of us got home safe after the club. 3 nights later, me and my then boyfriend were knocked out as I had work the next morning. My boyfriend worked nights, but he was off this night. This was at 3:41 in the morning. There's a knock at the door. My boyfriend goes to answer it and I'm walking behind him, wondering who could possibly be at the door at that time of night. We lived in a not so good area, so the porch lights would work when they wanted to, and now wasn't one of those times. As my boyfriend opens the door, the person at the door says, "Excuse me, ma'am, I can't get my car to start," and as he looks up, I immediately recognize him from the man at the club. I scream and my boyfriend catches on and closes the door. Lee and him had a few laughs when I told him about the guy at the club, so when I told him that was him, he opened the door back, I guess to confront him, but he was gone. We hadn't seen a car, but again, it was dark. I don't know how this man found where I live, other than following us home that night. I still get the chills thinking what may have happened if my boyfriend wasn't there that night. On Sunday, which was the 27th of November, at 19:45 I left a hotel in Krakow, Poland with my boyfriend to go to Kojo Mojo restaurant via Bolt. However, just prior to this I had a drink at the hotel bar and within 15 minutes of drinking some of it, I commented how drunk I already felt from it. Upon arriving to Kojo Mojo restaurant in Krakow, we proceeded to have dinner and some wine. This is when I blacked out and the rest of the night is a blur. We apparently left the restaurant shortly after and went to a bar which was a walking distance from the restaurant. Apparently upon arriving I looked like I was super drunk and had no hand or eye coordination, couldn't talk, and also proceeded to fall off the bar stool backwards. At this point my boyfriend tried his best to take me out of the restaurant, and whilst walking to the taxi, I fell over again completely into a pile of bikes. I couldn't even stand up by myself. Upon arriving back to our hotel by taxi, he got out first, and before I could get out, the taxi drove off with me still in. At this point I still do not remember anything at all. My boyfriend straight away called the police and tried calling me and I didn't answer, and he tracked my location to a car rental company. Finally, after about an hour, a woman picked up my phone pretending to be me. This was when my boyfriend called the police again to chase them, who came to the hotel to investigate. I only have 3 glimpses of memories for the window of 5 hours which I was missing for. 1. Being told to hide in the backseat footwell. 2. Being in a house which is still in the middle of construction which did not look like it was in a city, with other young women who had IVs attached. 3. Being on a motorway crying and pleading them that I have to get back to the hotel to get my passport, as I have a flight back to London. I somehow, and don't know how, managed to get back to the hotel after loads of crying and pleading and negotiation as they dropped me off at my hotel to get my passport. I ran straight to reception and did not go back out again. From this point I slowly started becoming more conscious of my surroundings, but it's still quite foggy. Shortly after returning to my hotel room, the police were informed that I had returned and started their investigation and looking at the camera footage which confirms my story. I then shortly realized that I was wearing a polo from the car rental company which was located in the same location as my phone for the rest of the night. However, every single time someone would pick up my mobile it would be a different woman of Albanian descent, and they said that they found my phone on the street, which doesn't make sense. Weirdly enough, my boyfriend got a phone call from a different police station the following morning saying my phone was handed in. I have the taxi driver's photo, registration plate, name and phone number, which was also passed over to the police in Poland. However, they haven't been able to help in any way. For context, I didn't grow up in a good area. I won't give location for privacy, but I live in a fairly large city. At the time I was around 10 or 11. This was overall not a good area. Lots of gang activity, drug use, that kind of thing. One of those neighborhoods with the jacked up sidewalks and shopping carts strewn everywhere. There was a park a couple blocks away from my house and I decided to go on a run and spend some time there on my own. I don't know why I was allowed to leave on my own, knowing the area. It was still light out when I jogged down there, but it started getting dark when I actually reached the park. It was around dusk. The layout of the park was a big rectangle basically. It faced out long ways, so the shorter side was where the gate was. It's hard to explain, so I'll try to attach a picture to show you people what it looked like. There was a set of swings at the very front and I sat down to hang out there for a bit. At the time I didn't have a phone with service, I just had music downloaded to listen to. I was sitting with my earbuds in and just got this really awful feeling. It felt like a tingling on my back and I knew something was up. I took one earbud out and kept swinging, but I couldn't shake that feeling. Finally, I turned around to check behind me. There was an alleyway leading into the park that curved so you could only see part of the way down. It was all white gravel. Down the alley was a dumpster. There was a figure on the ground with a ton of red stuff around him, which I now know was blood, and another guy standing walking towards me fast. The alley was across the playground, about 40 feet away maybe. As soon as I saw the man approaching me, I dipped out of there. He had something in his hand that I couldn't see, but he was holding it like a knife or a pair of scissors. I sprinted the couple blocks back to my house and got into the back to make sure no one saw me. I didn't tell my dad until years later, and he fully believed me. That area was bad news, and I'm amazed something bad didn't happen to me with how much I was let out alone. Alright, but that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment something down below. But as always,
Have a nice day.